Hello everyone, welcome back or welcome in. My name is Diana and here at Ultra Casual D we talk about all things games, game dev, and just oddly specific things. Like for example, today we're going to talk about game designers. And I myself as a game designer in the last 4 years, yes, I have also worked in the industry and for myself, so I feel like I'm very qualified to explain to you as a generalist game designer, I have seen the industry shift from being a generalist to, well, let's say more specific game designer roles. And today I'll be talking what types of game designers are actually going to be out there. And if you are interested in being a game designer, check out this list. I will have them chaptered below so that you can just have a quick peruse. Please note that this video is just going to go briefly into these 20 roles that I'm going to be telling you today. And if you want more information about them, you can either check them out on my ultracasual.co website, which will have more information on each of those designer roles, or I can talk more about in a different video. So, each of these designer roles will have a couple of sentences and why they matter. I just want to give you a brief overview of what a game designer actually does, and you may think that they're just the ideas guy, and yes, that's part of it, but that's just the surface level of it. So, yes, I'm talking about 20 game designer roles you may not have heard of, you may have heard of, but you know for sure that whatever game you're playing, they will have at least one of these, probably like two to three, depending on the type of game, maybe even more. And if you're interested, carry on watching. So, what actually is a game designer, you may ask? Well, think of a game designer like the architect and engineer of the game. They define the rules, the system, the mechanics, the pacing, the story, really depends on the type of game that you're going to be building. How the player is going to be interacting with that game. Okay, we're going to be breaking down into it, and you will be surprised at the amount of roles that's out there. Building a game is still a really massive endeavor, and you need to split those jobs into just actual roles a human being can do. No, I don't think AI is going to be taking over our jobs, okay? They can be of use, but not take over because they'll never understand how to really pull emotional feeling that and put it into a game. I just don't agree with it. Okay, I just don't agree with it. The studios will divide these responsibilities depending on the type of role of the game designer that you are more attuned to. So, for example, a systems designer, which I am not, or a combat designer, or maybe even a level designer, so on and so forth. You know what? I think I'll just rapid fire and go through all of them with you. So, for myself, I was a generalist game designer, so you can also think of this as like a core game designer. I would take whatever projects were available to us and help build that game from scratch. So, what is a core slash generalist designer? I would say the backbone of a designer. This role allowed me to touch on different types of game design and made me feel like, oh, I could totally do this side of the game design bubble versus, like I said earlier, systems. It's a nice way to have my thumbs in multiple pies and then see which one I would thrive in the best. They would generally define the game's core idea, the overall direction, and the mechanics. You can also see this as in the higher up of the chain, like the creative director. Your role is to make sure that the game doesn't lose its plot halfway through the project and make sure you're still on track and you're still implementing the right features in the right places and making sure everything flows really, really well. Without them, the game will end up kind of being just pieces of puzzles, and we core game designers need to put those pieces together, and then we can get a nice full big picture. Let's look at a gameplay designer. You can see them more of like a feeling expert. They will go through the game and really think about like the moment to moment feel of the game, the movement, the combat responsiveness, maybe like arcs in the game. Also, small things like hit reactions, those actually play a really big part. Imagine not having great hit reactions when you're playing Fortnite or any other shooting game, in a matter of fact, or even crafting game. You know, they need to make sure if the pressing the button feels good and is on time, and if the right VFX is on show. Because if you were to chop, I don't know, a tree down, but for some reason bubbles are coming out, it just wouldn't feel right. Right? Right. Fun isn't an accident. It is essentially engineered to make sure you are having fun. And that's what a gameplay designer does. Oh, gosh. Okay. So they are. There's a lot of logic and a lot of numbers involved with a system designer. So if you do like those kinds of things, this might be a route for you. They will help build like the deeper structures and the small things. Small. They're not. They're really, really not. So think about things like the progression, different levels, those need to be numerically correct. Otherwise, it may feel a bit odd. So once you hit level 50, does it then slow down or does it speed up? That is generally a lot of spreadsheets. I'll be really honest with you. Well, if your system falls apart, then your whole game really doesn't feel great and it feels badly made. Think of it like a really wobbly Jenga tower. Like there's coins there, but it's not stacked correctly. Combat designers. Well, you probably already know what I'm about to say. They essentially just craft enemy behaviors, attack patterns, weapon timing, combo windows. They will essentially choreograph, chore, choreograph, 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 choreography. They'll choreograph the battles. Yeah, that was a really hard word, you guys. Well, you'll know why, because a bad combat feels like a really bad game. And that's why combat designers are sought out. They want to make sure that the battles within their game feel really good. Level designers. Ooh, I do like level designers. So think of this of they make the actual spaces that you play in fun, and they have to think about the different paths or arenas or maybe puzzles or encounters. They also have to make sure the pacing of, let's say, their exploration or moving around the map feels really good. You know why this matters. Because a good level will guide the player without telling them what to do. We don't want to keep reading text, but if there's a path that looks like I can go down, that's perfect. World designers. This one's kind of big and kind of, let's say, almost like a creator director vibe, okay? So they will shape the overall world structure. Think of it like regions or zones or travel routes or just a spatial logic is right there in front of their brain. They will turn maps into worlds and livable places. What if some places are smaller and tighter versus big wild landscapes? They can transform a random map into living worlds. Think of it like Skyrim. There's people there, and some places are bigger and some places are smaller. Or tighter, maybe that's a better word. Narrative designers. Kind of know where I'm going to go with this one. They will integrate the narrative into the gameplay, and they need to think about if there are choices involved, the choice flow and how the narrative paces. Maybe they have missions in that game, so they need to make sure that that is not intrusive. What else? Narrative also, if it's an emotional game, they need to make sure it's in the correct places and it's hitting the right emotions so that the player will flow through the story in a much more meaningful and emotionally pulled way. They make stories not something that you read, but you actually play and experience because you're going through it yourself. quest designer, or sometimes a writer. So the writer will bounce between like a narrative designer or a quest designer or just a writer in itself. That can also be a role in itself depending on the type of game. Let's talk more about the quest designer side. They will craft the missions, the side quests, or maybe dialogue, lore entries, and maybe sometimes even item descriptions if they are part of that world. Let's say they're herbs and spices of the game world. You can thank them because they're responsible for the quotes that you'll be saying years on down. Content and live designers. You can view them as the designers who will build seasonal or just events in a game. They will generally create ongoing content, so events, challenges, maybe expansions, or just seasonal updates. And especially for a live game, you'll definitely need one of those content designers. Well, it will keep a live service game alive and have players come back for more because we all need that player retention. UX designer or user experience designers will really focus on player clarity, almost like the gameplay designers, but not quite. So a UX designer will design how the player will understand the game. For example, tutorials, they need to be accessible for everybody. They need to be easily readable. That reminds me, readability is also a big thing. Any guidance that may be needed. And think about the cognitive load. Could you imagine the tutorial just like spamming you with so many windows and so many tasks, and you won't be able to go through that gameplay because it's heavy on the cognitive load. This is where they come in. In some games, they also may need to focus on like the accessibility flow. Well, if the players can't understand your game, well, how are they going to play it? So that's when you get a UX designer. Moving on to the UI designer, the user interface designer, they will make everything on your screen, hopefully, easy to navigate. Hopefully. So things like the menu, the inventory, the HUD, the skill trees, maps, small things that the player will be interacting with, they need to make that easy to use and also readable. And, it stands out but also fades within the gameplay. Great UI will disappear, like I mentioned earlier, but bad UI. You will be able to tell a bad UI when you see it. And if you have any games that you think had bad UI, comment down below. The economy designer. This is similar to the system designer, but more fine-tuned to just the economy. So if the game has multiple currencies, they need to manage the currencies, manage the crafting cost, the XP sources, any sinks in that system, item values, and they just need to focus on the logic behind the progression. So this is essentially a more deep dive version of the system designer. When there's gold involved, everything needs to be balanced because could you imagine if you could buy really expensive things, but then it's really easy to get money and then you won't really feel rich, you just have stupid amount of money on the side? Well, that's what they do. Next is a monetization designer. So this can be both in-game currency and real money currency. So think of like, those designed cosmetic drops, they need to think about like the pricing strategies and battle passes. There's a lot of thought that goes into those things. Just a live service monetization feature, they will be looking after that. They will essentially keep players buying things and keeping the lights on for the studio. Technical designers. So technical designers are mostly focused on the early stages. So think like they prototype mechanics or build complex features, and they have to translate things between the design and engineering. Why does this matter? Well, earlier in your game, you may need a prototype designer, so a technical designer, who is able to turn your wild ideas into something that actually works. tools designer. This one you don't really see much of, and this can also be on the line of an engineer. They will build custom tools for the designers. The designers don't have the engineering experience. They will help build those tools to make the designer's life easier. So, for example, we need to be able to balance this enemy, but I need the tool for that. So the tool designer will make the tool for it, so the designer, the gameplay designer, will adjust it easier as they're playtesting the game. They'll build custom tools, like maybe even quest editors or level editing systems or node graphs or other tools that just may help the team be able to use in engine and make their workflow just a little bit smoother. Good tools will multiply the pace of the entire studio if they're easy to use and it quickens the workflow. Why wouldn't you have them? This role is definitely becoming more so, I would say, because we want to make sure our games are accessible to as many people as possible. This is a really big role to fall into. They can do like remapping or go through the readability of the game or just alternate modes so that they can actually access the game, you know. Yeah, okay. And they essentially ensure that the players of all types of backgrounds and abilities can enjoy the game that they want to play. Accessibility is never really was optional, but now feels like it should be optional. It's just a really big respect, and we fully respect those companies that put the money into making games more accessible. Especially for a game that has a lot of rewards and growth, you'll need a designer to create that emotional arc. So think of it like XP curves, unlocking pacing, or difficulty scaling. Progression is essentially a heartbeat for players who do keep playing the game. Who doesn't want to keep leveling up and getting bigger numbers? Balancing designers. They will also fall between the QA and designer line as they will tweak the numbers, like for example on weapons, on stats, the difficulty, maybe drop rates, PvP fairness, because it's not fun if someone is literally OP. So just nerf them, and that's their job. One broken weapon can really destroy the morale and feeling of wanting to carry on playing the game. And I'm sure you know how that feels. They're essentially like almost like directors. They can design the cutscene flow, the camera framing, transition, maybe even in-game camera behaviors. Especially if you have a heavy narrative game and you almost want to show it like a movie, this is where they will come in. They create moments that really punch you right in the gut and not just like, oh, okay, yeah, that happened. But by placing the camera in specific angles, it will, I mean, you've watched films, right? You know what I mean. And lastly, the player experience. So they also fall between the line of like gameplay, UX, really just depends on the kind of game you're making. They will focus on how the player will feel when they're playing the game and maybe think about like the friction or the satisfaction or reward timing and any essential frustration points that needs to be smoothened out before the game goes live. Well, they will also help shape the emotional journey of the game from start to the credit. There's a lot, and maybe you'll notice from this list that designers wear a lot of hats. And I've experienced it in the industry where I've had to wear a level design hat or a narrative design hat and even a monetization designer. For a person who was lucky enough to experience those, I now know that the narrative design and level design is a route that I want to take. So this is a small snippet of the types of designers that help shape the games that you play. And remember, not a lot of games require just one designer. We need a few months to bounce these ideas from and make sure that the game that you play will become a very loved game. And I'm sure I've missed a couple more roles And like I said, some of these roles will fall into, different types of designers, and they will share a title. So, for example, a principal designer can also come under a tools or a system designer. It really just fluctuates. And remember, we're all just human. We all just kind of. I feel like as gamers and designers, we just want to make something really, really good. So it doesn't matter what hat and title we fall into. But this was just a video to show you that there's just multiple roles in the industry, just within designers. And I'm sure programmers and artists will also have the same type of multiple little hats involved. So if you thought that the game designers were just one thing, and if you've learned that they're really not, then I feel like I've done my job here. And if you've enjoyed a little insight of the games industry, specifically the game designer roles, then yeah, please leave a comment, subscribe. My question for this video is, did any of these design roles really sparked something in you? And if so, what designer role would you think you'd fall into the best? What would a design role that you'd love to pursue? And maybe you're doing it right now. Are you building your own game? And what kind of game is it? So don't be shy and let me know, because I am a curious little bee and I just love to chat with you guys. So yeah, do all the fun things because it's free, liking, subscribing, and commenting, and checking out my other socials. I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. British time. Look after yourself, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.